Good morning. Welcome to Esther chapter 4. We're going to go back just for a moment and talk about Mordecai um, and Haman. We're going to talk about the problem that they were having. Mordecai would not bow down to Haman, and this really did upset him to the point that he wanted to destroy all the Jews in the kingdom, not just the Jews in Susa, but he wanted to destroy all the Jews in the known world, to eliminate them. Not only because of what Haman was doing, but his innate hatred of Jewish people. And of course, there was 127 provinces that stretched from hither to yon, as the old saying goes, but they were scattered all over the world, the known world. And of course, Haman was a little known politician at this point, but something happened to him, and we need to go back and read chapter 3 again, verse 1. Okay? After these events, King Ahasuerus honored Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor. Now, notice where this was, at the king's gate, and with the king's nobles, he gave him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. So now all of a sudden, Haman is, you might just say, second in the land, because he's way up there in politics. He has an in. He's just like this with the king. And so that's why he could get things done. And of course, some of the writings, we found out that I believe it's in the Mishnah, in the Midrash, we find out that Haman had taken a little idol and affixed it to his garment, and that's why Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him, because it's one of the three laws of the Jewish people that you absolutely cannot break. You cannot bow down to another god, you cannot commit adultery, and you cannot commit murder. Those are the three laws. Well, Haman, he says, look, I'm so great. The king has honored me so great. He's placed me in the highest chair at the king's gate to make decisions. And I'm really great. And I don't think it's right that Mordecai does not bow down to me. Well, so we have this particular thing happening, and he goes to the king, of course, and they have this conversation. The edicts are written in every land, in every language of the land, and sent out. And so they set down for an accomplishment. The last in chapter 3, verse 15, spurred on by the king's command, the couriers went out and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. Now, I don't want to sound too righteous or anything, but they sat down, as was the custom, to refresh themselves. You might say, well, they had a drink of wine, that's fine. They might have had lemonade. They might have just had a cooler water or whatever. But they're sitting down. The whole of the idea is they're sitting down and they're saying, wow, look what we've done. We've eliminated this threat. Chapter 4, when Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he only went as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province in which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. This reminds me of the story back in of King Hezekiah back in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. We'll get there in just a moment, but notice what Mordecai does. He rents his garment, and you'll see this even happen today when Jewish people have a death in the family. They will tear part of their garment. It's a sign of mourning. And mourning is not just being sad about something. Mourning is come to the realization that you yourself are, you're not going to live forever. You yourself are limited on your abilities. And when you're in mourning, you mourn for God to come and help. And it says that he tore his garment, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. If you would turn now back to, I believe it is 2 Kings chapter 19, and when the Assyrian army under Sennacherib came against Jerusalem, the army general stood out there and began to say, this is what we can do to you. There's been no country, nobody ever stand against us. We are the greatest army in the world. And King Hezekiah had scribes sitting out there writing down what the man was saying. And so when he finished talking how bad God was and how God couldn't do anything about the great army of Assyria, they went back and gave these transcripts, several pages or a scroll or something, and gave it to Hezekiah. And we find out here in 2 Kings 19, we also find out in 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verse 20, what happened at this point. We have King Hezekiah and Isaiah the prophet, and probably many others. We don't know exactly how many. They came out and they went to the temple. And so Hezekiah is carrying this letter that this general had proclaimed. And what he did was very symbolic of what we should do when things come against us that are not godly. He laid them out in front of the Lord. He actually laid it out in front of God. And basically what he said, of course you can read what he said, but in just common terms, he says, God, what are you going to do about this? This man has said, you're a nothing. This man says, this army is so great. What are you going to do about it? I turn this over to you. What are you going to do about it? This problem, God, is yours. It's not mine. And so, God, you take care of it. When he did that, when Hezekiah did that, the Lord worked a great miracle. And the entire Assyrian army, except for about 8 or 9 people, died in one night. That you'll find that in chapter, I believe it's chapter 32 of Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles, and in 2 Kings 19. Now, so this is what Hezekiah did. He went before the Lord. This is what Mordecai did. He ripped his garment. He went out into the public, pouring ashes and on his head, wailing, all of this in order to get to say, God, we don't know what to do about this. They're going to kill all the Jews in the land. They're going to kill all the Jews everywhere in all of the known world. We cannot stop this. We cannot help it. It's your problem. You need to fix it. When Esther's, starting in verse 4, when Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of sackcloth. What's the deal? You don't need to wear sackcloth. Now, sackcloth is actually, we might call it toe sack. It's pretty rough material, burlap. It's rough material. It's not smooth like silk. It's not smooth like a cotton shirt that I've got on. It's pretty rough against your skin. And she sent Mordecai clothes to put on instead of the sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, excited to attend to her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. She didn't know. She's kept in the harem. The women did not know what these men had schemed to do. Esther did not know. All she knew was that Mordecai, the man that brought her up from a very young child because of the death of her parents, Mordecai was in distress. Sometimes our friends get in distress, and our children and those that we love, our parents, they get into a situation of distress. And yes, we've got different things that we can go to within society and help them. But some things society cannot help. And so what we need to do is we need to learn to depend upon the Lord and go to the Lord and tell him, this is what the situation is. What are you going to do about it?